The F-35 Lockheed Martin's Joint Strike Fighter. What went wrong with it? Last month we had a terrible accident with the Japan Air Force that had an accident with their F-35. They still have not found it. Now, even though they had a transponder, that didn't work. The F-35 was built as a fighter jet that could do almost everything the U.S. military desired, serving the Air Force, Marine Corps, and Navy, and even Britain's Royal Air Force and Royal Navy. And it's also, I think Japan ordered another 147. This is on The Conversation, examining what's going on with this. Now, all-in-one aircraft design, it's supposed to replace and improve upon several current and aging aircraft types with widely different missions. It's marketed as a cost-effective, powerful, multi-role fighter airplane, significantly better than anything potential adversaries could build in their next 2 decades, but it's turned out to be none of those things. Officially begun in 2001 with the roots extending back to the late 1980s, the F-35 program is nearly a decade behind schedule and has failed to meet many of its original design requirements. It's also become the most expensive defense program in world history, at around $1.5 trillion before the fighter is phased out. Yes, it will be phased out in 2070. This article is on The Conversation by author Michael P. Hughes, professor of finance, Francis Maron University. And by the way, he owns shares of an exchange-traded fund that includes shares of Lockheed Martin, along with many other aerospace and defense companies. So now, going on with this, it will be phased out in 2070. The unit cost per plane, above $100 million for each plane, is roughly twice what it was promised early on. Even after President Trump lambasted the cost of the program in February, the price per plane dropped just $7 million. That's less than 7%. And yet, the U.S. is still throwing huge sums of money at the project. Essentially, the Pentagon has declared the F-35 too big to fail, quote-unquote. As a retired member of the U.S. Air Force and current university professor of finance who has been involved in and studied military aviation and acquisitions, I find the F-35 to be one of the greatest boondoggles in recent military purchasing history. So he should know, because he's a retired member of the U.S. Air Force. Now, forgetting what's already spent, he says the Pentagon is trying to argue that just because taxpayers have flushed more than $100 billion down the proverbial toilet so far for this, we must continue to throw billions more down the same toilet. That violates the most elementary financial principles of capital budgeting, which is the method companies and governments use to decide on investments. So-called sunk costs, the money already paid on a project, should never be a factor in investment decisions. Rather, spending should be based on how it will add value in the future. Keeping the F-35 program alive is not only a gross waste in itself, its funding could be spent on defense programs that are really useful and needed for national defense, such as anti-drone systems to defend the U.S. troops. Part of the enormous cost has come as a result of an effort to share aircraft design and replacement parts across different branches of the military. In 2013, a study by the RAND Corporation found that it would have been cheaper if the Air Force, Marine Corps, and Navy had simply designed and developed separate and more specialized aircraft to meet their specific operational requirements. Now, it's not living up to top billing. The company building the F-35 has made grand claims. Lockheed Martin said the plane would be far better than current aircraft, 4 times more effective in air-to-air combat, 8 times more effective in air-to-ground combat, and 3 times more effective in recognizing and suppressing an enemy's air defenses. It would in fact be second only to the F-22 in air superiority, they say. In addition, the F-35 was to have better range and require less logistic support than current military aircraft. The Pentagon is still calling the F-35 the most affordable, lethal, supportable, and survivable aircraft ever to be used. But that's not how the plane has turned out. In January 2015, mock combat tests pitted the F-35 against the F-16, one of the fighters it is slated to replace. The F-35A was flown clean with empty weapon bays and without any drag inducing the heavy externally mounted weapons or fuel tanks. The F-16D, a heavier and somewhat less capable training version of the mainstay F-16C, was further encumbered with two 370-gallon external wing-mounted fuel tanks. In spite of its significant advantages, the F-35A's test pilot noted that the F-35A was less maneuverable and markedly inferior to the F-16D in a visual range dogfight. Stealth over power. One key reason the F-35 doesn't possess the world-beating air-to-air prowess promised, and is likely not even adequate when compared with its current potential adversaries, is that it was designed first and foremost to be a stealthy airplane. This requirement has taken precedence over maneuverability and likely above its overall air-to-air lethality. The Pentagon, and especially the Air Force, seem to be relying almost exclusively on the F-35's stealth capabilities to succeed at its missions. Like the F-117, F-22, and F-35 stealth capability greatly reduces but does not eliminate its radar cross-section, the signal that radars see bouncing back off an airplane. The plane looks smaller on radar, perhaps like a bird rather than a plane, but is not visible. The F-35 is designed to be stealthy, primarily in the X-band, the radar frequency range most commonly used for targeting in air-to-air combat. In other radar frequencies, the F-35 is not so stealthy, making it vulnerable to being tracked and shot down using current and even obsolete weapons. As far back as 1999, the same type of stealth technology was not able to prevent a U.S. Air Force F-117 flying over Kosovo from being located, tracked, and shot down using an out-of-date Soviet radar and surface-to-air missile system. In the nearly 2 decades since, that incident has been studied in depth, not only by U.S., but also by potential adversaries seeking weaknesses in passive radar stealth aircraft. Of course, radar is not the only way to locate and target an aircraft. One can also use the aircraft's infrared emissions, of course, which are created by friction-generated heat as it flies through the air, along with its hot engines. Several nations, particularly the Russians, have excellent passive infrared search and tracking systems that can locate and target enemy aircraft with great precision, sometimes using lasers to measure exact distances, but without needing radar. It's also very common in air-to-air battles for opposing airplanes to come close enough to their pilots so their pilots can see each other. The F-35 is as visible as any other aircraft in size. Lockheed Martin and the Pentagon says the F-35's superiority over its rivals lies in the ability to remain undetected, giving it first look, first shot, first kill. Hugh Harkins, a highly respected author on military combat aircraft, called the claim, quote, a marketing and publicity gimmick, end quote, in his book on Russian Sukhoi Su-35's potential opponent to the F-35. He also wrote, quote, in real terms, an aircraft in the class of F-35 cannot compete with the Sukhoi Su-35S for out-and-out performance such as speed, climb, altitude, and maneuverability. There was also an embedded video that you can see. Defense analyst Pierre Spray on the F-35. You can watch that. It's called The Fifth Estate. Now, he's a fighter plane expert, Pierre Spray, and he's a harsh critic of the F-35. Other critics have been even harsher. Pierre Spray, the co-founding member of the so-called fighter mafia at the Pentagon and a co-designer, so he was one of the designers of the F-16, calls the F-35 an inherently terrible airplane that is the product of, quote, an exceptionally dumb piece of Air Force PR spin, end quote. He has said that the F-35 would likely lose a close-in combat encounter to a well-flown MiG-21, a 1950s Soviet fighter design, Robert Dorr, an Air Force veteran, career diplomat, and military air combat historian, wrote in his book Air Power Abandoned, he said the F-35 demonstrates repeatedly that it can't live up to promises made for it, and it's that bad. So how did we get here? How did the F-35 go from its conception to the most technologically advanced do-it-all military aircraft in the world to a virtual turkey over the decades-long efforts to meet a real military need for better aircraft? The F-35 program is a result of the merging or combination of several other separate and diverse projects into a set of requirements for an airplane that is trying to be everything to everybody. In combat, the difference between winning and losing is often not very great. With second place all too often meaning death, the Pentagon seeks to provide warriors with the best possible equipment. The best tools are those that are tailor-made to address specific missions and types of combat. Seeks to accomplish more tasks with less money, defense planners looking for ways to economize. For a fighter airplane, funding decisions become a balancing act of procuring not just the best aircraft possible, but enough of them to make an effective force. This has led to the creation of the so-called multi-role fighter aircraft, capable both in air-to-air combat and against ground targets. Where trade-offs have to happen, designers of most multi-role fighters emphasize aerial combat strength, reducing air-to-ground capabilities. With the F-35, it appears designers created an airplane that doesn't do either mission exceptionally well. They have made the plane an elegant jack of all trades, but master of none, at great expense both in the past and apparently well into the future. I believe the F-35 program should be immediately canceled. The technologies and systems developed for it should be used in more up-to-date and cost-effective aircraft designs. Specifically, the F-35 should be replaced with a series of new designs targeted towards the specific mission requirements of the individual branches of the armed forces, in lieu of a single aircraft design trying to be everything to everyone. And let's remember, this article has been written by a person that used to be in the US Air Force. He knows what he's talking about, and he even owns shares of Lockheed Martin, who has developed the F-35. And this is on The Conversation. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.